This is a true paranormal story from Finland, and it happened over a span of 7 years. It all started when I was 27, living with my family in an old priest's house because my mother was a priest. Our household consisted of my mother, father, 2 brothers, and sometimes my grandmother would visit. The house was very old, with parts of it being over 200 years old. In the beginning, everything seemed normal, just like any other priest's house. But then, one day, things started to take a terrifying turn. It all began when my brother was home alone with a friend. An old Chinese plate that was hanging on the wall suddenly came crashing down. My brother asked his friend if he had touched it, but his friend insisted that it wasn't him. They argued, but the incident felt strange. After that, things went quiet for a few months. But then my entire family started hearing heavy footsteps on the stairs at night. These footsteps would start from the 2nd floor and always stop at a door on the 1st floor. By this point, we all knew that something was not right in the house. The paranormal events grew more intense the longer we lived there. One night, as I walked to the bathroom, I was shocked to find that our table and chairs had been rearranged into a pyramid-like structure. I told my parent, and they were pale with fear. My father, upset, said we were probably dealing with a poltergeist, something that wanted us to leave. He checked every room, but it was empty. The situation only worsened. A few days later, I walked to the bathroom again, but this time I accidentally stepped onto our samurai sword, which had been forced deeply into the wooden floor, as if some invisible force had pressed it down with unimaginable power. This happened twice. After the second time, my father decided to keep the sword with him, sleeping with one eye open for our protection. We all started sleeping in my parents' room due to our fears. Then the footsteps returned, and they seemed to be walking down the stairs, heading toward my parents' room. When they stopped beside my father's bed, something tried to grab the sword from his hand. My father is over 100 kilograms, and yet this unseen force nearly pulled the sword from his grasp. We were all stunned, and we realized just how powerful the poltergeist was. It felt like we were living in a horror movie. The strange events didn't stop there. Books were thrown off the bookshelf, one of them hitting my father on the head. Our home had truly become a nightmare, more horrifying than any movie. For months, strange sounds became a regular occurrence, but eventually, there would be quiet period. During our time in the house, we got a dog named Caxon, but the dog became increasingly fearful, especially of the 2nd floor, where all the terrifying events seemed to originate. Caxon would never go upstairs on his own. One night, my 2 younger brothers ran downstairs in terror, crying because objects around them had moved or been rearranged. One Christmas, when the poltergeist was at its most violent, my father saw something descending the stair. He grabbed a knife and ran after it. I saw a dark shadow floating upstairs, followed by my angry father charging after it. There was a lot of noise, and my father was shouting at the spirit to leave. When he returned, he was pale and shaky. He told us that he had never seen anything so evil in his life. He tried to stab the ghost, but it let out an evil laugh and vanished into thin air. I never saw the ghost clearly, only its shadow, but one of my brothers claimed to have seen multiple spirits, including one that was almost impossible to describe. One Christmas, my grandmother was so terrified of the spirits that she took a taxi home, even though it was over 80 kilometers away. Caxon, our dog, still shows signs of trauma from that house to this day. We eventually moved away from that house many years ago, and since then, my family has never experienced anything like that again. The house is now abandoned, and anyone who has moved in there has quickly left. This was a true story, and after going through such a terrifying experience, I now view the paranormal very differently.